Hello guys, I'm an artist, Yaroslav Ternovsky, and today we're going to make a very interesting Christmas picture using a limited palette of pastels. Let's go! So guys, I prefer using limited palette. You see just a few chalks, and with this set we're gonna make the full artwork, which delivers a powerful light and nice glittering Christmas baubles. What I must say, why limited palette? Because when you use just a few colors to deliver unlimited emotions, unlimited reflections, that means you are a great professional. Well, as you see, I've got two kinds of reddish color. It's deep red and magenta. I've got three achromatic colors. It's black, gray and white. Two bluish colors to deliver some cold hues in the picture, and three yellow colors. It's a kind of ochre, yellow, light ochre, a kind of cadmium yellow, and a color like an earthenware, something like dark orange. With this limited palette, we're going to produce unlimited feelings in our drawing. Let's see how it works. Using pastels in artwork may be very interesting, especially when you work on a colored paper. Here I've got dark gray paper, and it means that in some areas we're going to take light out of this paper. So we're gonna work from dark to light. If you've got white paper, of course you need to work from white to dark. And for some reasons, for beginners, it's very difficult to keep the whole picture in a correct tone. So neutral gray colors, neutral gray hues, or maybe they might be other different hues, but such tones, they help us to keep the common tone of the picture. But before we start any tones, applying any tone, let's see how to work with composition. Composition is the very beginning of our picture. First of all, I try to keep in focus the whole format. The whole format is our area through which we're gonna talk. As you see, our composition is on the right hand. There are three Christmas baubles. And, well, the task is to position them here in an interesting way. If you position them in a row, it won't be very dynamic composition. Thus, this composition is not very interesting. In order to avoid it, I'm going to put them in different areas with very gentle and soft touch of gray chalk. Here, and there. Now I'm thinking about colors simultaneously with the size, because the color is very important. If I put here very light yellow color, as we see in our composition, it means that this part of picture will be very attractive. It will drag our attention to this corner, and it might be ineffective if you draw the whole viewer's attention to this particular part. So I've got on the other hand, I've got this glittering bauble, and you see this is very harsh stroke of light on the bauble. It means that, again, this toy will attract our attention even more than the yellow one, because we're going to use powerful contrast here. So these are things to be taken into consideration while you're working. Well, I tried to put all these baubles on a different levels vertically and of course on the different positions horizontally here. Then we can start toning our bubbles. I will start with a simple gray and we'll try to add some hues here, here. All the task is to experiment with strokes, not be afraid of applying any tone, and doing this I hold in my chalk. I'm using the whole flat side of the chalk, not just one rib or corner of the chalk, just the whole side. You see, I put it on the paper and drag it across the shape. Here we are. Well, then I'll continue with ochre if I need to release it from its wrapping. So here you are, and again I can apply it with this white chalk stroke. Here we are. So now we are arranging the color composition. Here it is. We've got it. And of course, we have very strong shadows, falling shadows under our bubbles. But be careful of using dark hues here, for example, black. If you cover the shadow area with black very thoroughly, it might be difficult to work with the reflections which are also there. So here we are, it's the very beginning, and you might pay an attention to those gray areas on the bubbles, and you see they start working now. Because of the shadows, they keep the outline, visual outline. Also, we applied color on the top of the bubbles, on the top part of the bubbles, and thus we've got the contour of the elements. So we can say that we play with the color of the paper. All we need to do is to elaborate it further. Well, I want to add some warm hues to the foreground. As you see, we've got a very strong backlight. That's why backlight comes from the back of the objects, and you see the strong shadows in front of them, and of course the specific warm and light area surrounding the bubbles and the shadows. Here we are. So adding these warm hues to the flat space, to the table, let's say, so we need to add it to the bubbles as well. Here we are. Right. Of course, we've got the reflection of the shadow in the bubbles. If you pay attention, you will see it, but I can't do it the same color, otherwise it will be the same, let's say, form here. But I want to distinguish the form of bubble and the form of falling shadow. So I added just a little bit of blue, but be careful, don't overdraw, don't over apply the chalk, because when the gray paper doesn't work anymore, it seems that you've done something wrong. So it's better to keep it working then. Well, the next I will apply some strong contrasts. I'm using now black chalk. I see some abstract forms in the bubble. Of course, I see the reflections of the room, of the studio, windows, cupboards, and myself, but we don't need. all these tiny details. Well, I don't have very dark red, but I can work with black chalk again, even in chromatic areas, because next, after black, I'm going to apply again some magenta. It will be dark magenta now. Well, maybe some red colors to the yellow bubble, because here it comes the interreflection. You see, we've got very strong mirroring because the surface is very smooth and flat. That's why it works as a mirror. Here, the magenta bubble is mirroring. And here, again, the magenta bubble is mirroring, but it turns to be red hue because yellow and magenta are mixing here in the reflection. Well, this is our prototype of our painting. What we need to do next is just to show some tiny details, those hangers. I'm using just gray chalk, and here I pay attention to place those hangers in different directions. If they are all the same way, all the same angle, it might not be very interesting. So our next step is to soften all those chalk strokes to some degree, and maybe I don't need so much blue here. Just soften it. And again, we can soften the falling shadows. They are very achromatic and dark now, so we're going to work further with them. As you see, I try to keep all the edges visible to some extent, and if some edges are blurred, don't try to emphasize them with the chalk, so just leave them blurred. In some areas it might be very interesting, those blurred edges and strokes. So here we are, we softened all the areas, the shadows, and maybe this flat surface of the table. As you see, all the objects, they are laying on the gray tablecloth. What we just using the colors with which we associate the light. And you clearly see it on the video that the surface has some pinkish color with clear yellowish tones. Here we are. Here we are. Well, let's move on. I've got light blue chalk, and with this light blue I'm going to add some strong reflections. It's not the lightest chalk I've got, because the lightest is white, but it's still to be used later. You see, in some areas I don't even have the edge, I don't even have the contour, and I want to preserve this area untouched. These areas will connect the background with our bubbles, and it will be very interesting. If I need to using pastels in art may be very interesting, especially when you work on a tinted but not always and not everywhere, remember it. Here again, I think where to emphasize, and I think that this accent might be in an area closer to the light source, since we've got the backlight, the lightest area will be here. And of course I'm using deep red to add some emphasis in color. Here we are, not much, a little bit here, again not much. Then we are working with this magenta bubble. We will add some tone to the dark reflection of the tablecloth. Here we are. Again, we are paying an attention to the shape, to keep it circle, to keep it spherical. And the yellow bubble also needs some improvements in terms of color and in terms of shape. Here we are. You see that I'm trying to keep all those gray areas gray. This is very important here. Well, and of course some emphasis to the hanger, here and here. And now we can work with the most interesting thing, the most powerful. It's highlights. They are highlights, those glitterings. So to put the highlight, I'm using different hues. For example, red, then magenta, then the very light color I've got. It's pure white color. Here it is. And of course, I blur it to some extent. I blur the edges of the stroke to some extent to make this effect of radiation here. Concerning the gray bubble, first I add some yellow, and then again pure white chalk, and blur it to some extent, and it's producing the totally, absolutely beautiful effect of shining. You see how it works. Here it is. And one more thing to add to the yellow bubble, but you must be careful here because the surface is matte and we don't have so powerful light on it, but still we can add some. Here we are. And I'm using, you see, different types of yellow, not just cadmium yellow or trying to keep it in different tone, but I'm adding ochre yellow, cadmium yellow, and maybe some dark orange here. Here we are. And all we need to do is to add some reflections to the falling shadows, because you see they are uncolored, thus uninteresting. Some deep shadows under the bubble will emphasize its shape, but you don't need to outline the bubbles with those emphases. Just some areas, and some areas you can remain even blurred. Well, when we've got this gray bubble, it hardly can reflect on the gray surface, so we use the reflection from the magenta object and add some magenta color to the shadows here. You see how it works? Very beautiful reflection. Again, the reflection onto the magenta bubble here. Very powerful reflection. and it helps us to comprehend the whole situation. And at last, as you understand, we're gonna add some yellowish colors to the dark areas of the shadow from the yellow object. And also, to emphasize the shadows, we can add some bluish tone here, here, and here, just to make it more powerful, more colorful. In some areas you can work with contours of the shadows, but don't overwork with that. Here we are. I'm just making some improvements in order to keep it interesting and to keep it underdeveloped, because some areas of your painting must be underdeveloped to make your picture interesting. And finally, the tiniest details, which will make your picture beautiful. And of course, don't forget about your signature. Here it is, ready. So let's summarize, guys, our achievements here. First, we worked with the composition. We paid an attention to the sizes of the baubles. The largest object is placed on the right hand, and the smaller objects, they are placed on the left hand. It's good when all your objects are different in size, and we here are the smallest in the center and the largest on the right hand. And since the largest object has the strongest contrast, despite the fact that it's made of gray shadows, of gray hues, it's still very attractive. On the other hand, this yellow object doesn't have so strong contrasts, and it doesn't drag too much of attention to itself. So first the composition, then the tonal composition, the tonal and color composition, then some tiny reflections, and the last part of your painting is your glitters here and small details. Well guys, I hope this video was interesting for you and you made your own masterpieces. Subscribe to our channels in order not to miss interesting videos which are coming. See you later. Bye.